So welcome everybody. I am Liz Cave from Your Invisible Partner. And with me on the call today, I've got Edward Gallagher, who's Head of Learning and Development at Leonardo Hotels, and Izzy Mahati, who's from EP. We've got an action-packed, well, I'm hoping it's an action-packed hour for you. So we're going to talk about, and we're going to cover an overview of the role of mentoring at Leonardo Hotels, followed by some very special guests. So we have Edward Bracken who's the general manager at the Athenaeum Hotel and Residences. We also have Ian Fitzgerald, managing director at Stein. So we're going to hear some fascinating facts and opinions from them. Izzy's going to conduct that interview for us. We've then followed that with a quick poll. So we're going to talk about, and then finally, to finish off today, we're going to talk about an exciting challenge we've got for everybody, if you're up for it, that we're going to do over the next 3 months. But before I hand over to Ed to kick us off talking about Leonardo Hotels and mentoring, I just want to do a quick recap, if I can, from the November event. So the November event was really fun and we all had a great time. We had some real highlights because we had four amazing speakers and they were fascinating. They talked about the importance of mentoring and more importantly, about making mentoring accessible to everybody. And that was a key point. Another key point was AI versus human mentors. And I remember Ramesh Vala saying, AI can give you information, but not inspiration, which I thought was a well for me. I could understand that, and I totally got where he was coming from. But we had some people who obviously didn't disagree with that. Sorry, who disagreed with that. Um, I think the consensus from both the speakers and the people that attended the event in November was three things. One is that mentoring is not only relevant and important in 2025 as it was then and beyond, so now, but also that AI can be used as an enabler. So although some of us might not like artificial intelligence, etc., and all the add-ons of that, it can be used as a force for good, so not just evil. And finally, that we all thought, speakers and people that were attending, that it's important that everybody has access to a mentor if they want one, regardless of where they come from, what they do, backgrounds, etc. And we thought that was really important. Some people were making the point that maybe mentoring has become quite elitist, and we're hoping that we can talk more about how we can break down those barriers and give everybody an opportunity to be mentored if they want to be. So that's enough from me because I'm sure you all received the reports from Izzy anyway that gave you all those facts. So let's get the party started and Ed, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, drink in hand, hopefully. Okay, after saying party started, I've got to remember it's Thursday rather than Friday. But yeah, we can definitely have a go. Afternoon, everybody. I'm Ed Gallier. I'm Head of Learning and Development for Leonardo Hotels. If you were along with us at Leonardo Royal St Paul's, you'd remember me in my green cape with Liz there at the start of the session. Um, and really, as Liz said, this was an opportunity for us to focus again on mentoring and just give you a little bit of an insight into what we're doing at Leonardo Hotels here in the UK and Ireland, as a bit of an insight, really. So the UK and Ireland division, it's 60 hotels and about 5,500 people. So I tell you that not to brag, but more to sort of scope out the complexity or the opportunity, whichever you view here. And particularly with Liz, I've worked with Liz for a good number of years in L&D, so one of our external learning partners. But an observation a few years ago from Liz was how we engage mentorship within the organisation. So that's really where I want to go with this. That one of the great successes for us, so our strategy is to grow rather be somebody else's growth. And we either build or acquire hotels at relative speed. And one of my key tasks with the ops team is to facilitate a pipeline of talent within the organization or hire people to come into that pipeline of talent so we can grow stably. And we do a lot of delivery. So face-to-face delivery, still face-to-face, and that relationship aspect within hospitality, that sort of will give you a little bit of a clue about my philosophy is really important. Um, Hospitality people love to chat, they love to get to know each other. Most importantly, they love to get to know the guest as well. So face to face, we put a lot of money behind that. We also put money behind online learning, so learn at your own pace through an LMS and LXP, or live Teams facilitation. And there's great advantages of you as you know with that blend because it means that if travel is an issue for you, if time away from home, you've got caring responsibilities, family responsibilities, you're not excluded from learning and development because you've got to travel to a center or to a host hotel. So we operate this blended environment. And at any one time, there's about 500 people on a pipeline development program, which in my head, I'd love to get to 10%. Of headcount, but we're not running a hotel school, as Jason, the managing director, would tell me. So it's got to have a business angle to it. But how we structure those pipeline development programs is that because it's a pipeline, it's from the most junior to the most senior. And we engaged mentoring where, because the programs run every year, sometimes twice a year, so we have lots of these different cohorts. The the group on the program ahead of the program behind them are invited to mentor that junior program. So we call it cascade mentoring in the organization. So to give you an example, we with our deputy general manager program, and we have like a trainee general manager program. So the general manager program would mentor the deputy general manager program. The deputy manager program would mentor the operations program, and it cascades all the way down to our supervisory program. And that has been really, really successful. It's a little bit of a closed shop because clearly the mentors are on a program. They've already been selected and assessed and joined the program, and then they're training, they're mentoring other people on a program. But the success there has been great in terms of growing people's network. So across the 60 sites, a site can have anything from 20 to 300 employees on. So growing that network around the organization, I know more people than just in my site or even in my own role. So if I'm food and beverage manager, getting to know other people outside food and beverage, outside my site in the organization. And what a positive here is that we talk about the Leonardo family, and at some point it'll be a sad day perhaps that maybe we won't be a family because we'll be too big. There must be a line where you can't say it's a family, it's a community or an organization. But mentorship seems to perpetuate a real honest living of that Leonardo family. It plays its part in that. And it's really helped in terms of knowing what's going on in the wider organization, encouraging people because they're learning from each other, taking advice from each other to focus on flexibility and mobility. Um, it's harder to measure specifically on L&D or mentorship, but our stability is up, our turnover is down. Some of that, I'm sure, anything that happens this year is probably market led. So we always talk to the managers about it won't be 100% that you're doing a great job. It might be there isn't a job to go to from someone who really does want to leave. But the numbers look really, really good. Liz mentioned that sort of access and open aspect to mentorship. So in starting sort of mid last year, and we really turned the taps on now, we engaged with our people management system, Workday, that gave us an opportunity to offer mentorship. So every employee accesses Workday from their app. They check in every day with Workday, payslips, holiday applications. So they use the app a lot. But we've just recently switched on the mentorship area of the careers section. And what we're wanting to do here is sort of blow that whole mentorship open. So we're currently rolling out opportunities where anyone can be a mentor. load up a little video story about themselves, a little profile, select from a drop down what you want to mentor in. And if any of you are old enough, in my head, it's a little bit like the old job centre boards when the postcards were on the stand. So you can go along and you can go, I fancy that mentor, mentor. And you can compare four mentors on screen and who I may never have met. They've got something that I think I need. And then with a click, I can approach that person and share my story and say, would you like to mentor me? And both parties have to agree. And the line manager of both parties, they don't have to approve, but they are involved in the communication. So nothing's happening in secret. So it's very transparent, very open. And anyone with access to Workday, which is 100% of the team, will be able to access mentorship. So at this point in the journey, we are focusing on building our jobs board, our mentorship board. And then in March, we'll launch to the business through our communication app. This is what you can do. This is how you can find your mentor if you would like one. And we'll still carry on recommending in the programs, but what we'll do in the programs is give them two options to be part of the Cascade mentorship or go and find a mentor using the mentorship platform. So again, it's less, we've removed some of the rails. I'd love to see what happens there, whether they go totally rogue and go and find their own mentor or benefit on somebody who is maybe 12, 18 months, 2 years ahead of them in their pipeline. So that's where we are with Leonardo Hotels. It's really exciting. And for me, it is that open access, transparent, because as a culture, I think we do have a really good feel around the transparency of everything that we do. But mentorship should be something that you shout about. And if you think about the environment that, hospitality we're in, I think it's a really good ROI way to develop yourself. It's really flexible. You're doing it in work time. You might be doing it passively outside of work time as well, but it's one-on-one. It's very bespoke. It can happen remotely. There's no compulsion that people have to meet face to face. Everyone in the organization is really great at using virtual tools like this. So I think it can really give us a little bit of an edge and give everyone access to something within, if I label it as L&D or personal development, that everyone isn't accessing at the moment. It isn't just that 10% of seeding with a course. It's all about experiential learning and sharing shared experiences. I think it gives us a great opportunity for the face-to-face virtual mentorship, just to split it away from maybe AI mentorship that Liz mentioned earlier on. But that's our story from Leonardo Hotels and where we are at the moment. And the next 12 months will be a really exciting year. We're looking to November being the month of mentorship and celebrating stories and wins from the year and potentially awarding a mentor or mentors of the year and giving it a little bit of profile within the organization. Yeah. Thanks very much, Liz.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Ed. That was great. Thank you. So over to me on the interview. So I'm delighted to introduce and welcome two successful industry leaders, Ian Fitzgerald, Managing Director of Rick Stein, and Edward Bracken, General Manager at the Athenaeum Hotel and Residences. Both do possess over 2 decades of experience in leadership roles, and both are passionate about the need to engage and inspire developing talent. And both have worked as well with several exceptional leaders themselves. So we asked today, what are their lessons, who positively influence their careers, and how do they see this topic of mentoring and how we as an industry can ensure that we're both progressive and effective. Ian's worked with such great characters at Rick Stein, Marco Pierre White, Kit Chapman over the years, all leading entrepreneurial figures. And Edward is a Katie Award winner and has worked for leading corporates such as Marriott, Intercontinental and Radisson. Two very different backgrounds, which will have their own lessons for us to reflect on. So thank you, Ian and Edward, for joining us this afternoon. To start, you've both worked with great leaders. Who are the ones that inspired you the most, let's say? Edward, would you like to start?
Well, first of all, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. I would say to you that I came over, I graduated out of a college in Ireland, Shannon, the Hotel College, and came to do a placement at through Forte Hotels. And in the early years, there was a guy called Jim Stevenson. He was general manager of the Queen's Hotel in Leeds. And I always remember I was one of these sort of characters. I had an attitude in my head that I'll go anywhere, I'll do anything as long as there's an opportunity for me to grow and develop. And Jim was an interesting guy in that he cottoned on very quickly that if he guided me in the right way, that I could probably tick a lot of boxes and fix a lot of things for him in his business. And one of the first roles that I remember coming to the end of my placement, mad keen to find a job, and the front office manager had left the hotels. So we're in the centre of Leeds, and he had a problem. And I knocked on his door and I said, look, I've been working in the area in front office. Could I have the job? And he kind of looked at me, and I could see his brain working overtime, thinking, well, I probably was bit shy in expertise and experience. Technically, I'd kind of figured things out, but from a management point of view. And I think what I would say to you is that you need somebody to believe in yourself. You need somebody along the way that will give you that advocacy and that support. And he was that guy. And he was the one that I spent quite a bit of time around. And I found that there is a thing called the Pygmalion effect. You surround yourself with people who are successful. That makes you successful. If you follow or surround yourself with negative characters, it tends to pull you down. And one of the things I found very clearly in my early days was that whole attitude of mind for me was really important. And it was something that he spoke to me an awful lot about, where people would sometimes kick off, they weren't happy with things. And he would always say to me, look, you can find and give me a list of things that are wrong. That's anybody could do that. You give me the list and you tell me how you're going to fix some of these things and have a go. And I think for me, that was really, really important and something that I've never, ever forgotten. Behavior to me breeds behavior. It's fundamental. And no matter what stage you're at in your career, it's critical that you have that right attitude of mind. And I think the other thing I would say to you is that, the challenges and pitfalls, and I use a word very sensibly here, failure and setbacks, they are probably some of the biggest opportunities to learn, but you got to have the right attitude to see through those issues when they happen to you. Can you work out, well, what's happened, why, and how do you fix it? And probably that's where I've had some of the biggest learnings in my career so far. So Jim Stevenson would be the one, and the other one I just at the same time is a guy called Harry Murray. He led by example. Harry ran the Imperial in Torquay. I was parachuted in there, and the one thing I saw in this guy was that rain, hail, or snow, every evening he walked the tables in this restaurant, and there was a big restaurant, oversaw the sea, and he would check in with the guests and he would talk to them and he would listen to them. He had a little notepad and he made make a note. He was impeccably well dressed. He was so consistent in his approach. And I thought, wow. And this is a guy who'd been around for a while. And I think the other thing that we have in our industry is not to get jaded, because you can end up getting, it's a tough business we're involved in, and we've seen some very difficult times. And I think honing your skills and your mindset, and maybe we can come back to this in a little bit, because I think honing your own individual self-speak and self-thought and how you talk to yourself is really important in the world that we're in at the minute.
Yeah, definitely. I think that mindset piece is really important, as you say. Yeah, definitely. Ian, do you have anything? I mean, who are the greatest leaders that you've kind of been inspired by?
Well, I think what comes or who comes to mind as inspiration as opposed to being mentors are a couple of individuals early on in my career. Early 20s, I was very lucky to experience both as a guest and as a member of the team, a hotel called Sharrow Bay in the Lake District. And I could quite easily say that there's never been any other place that I would say has touched me in terms of a hospitality, a true hospitality business than Sharrow Bay. It was run by two wonderful gentlemen, Francis Coates and Brian Sack. They famously originated sticky toffee pudding. They ran their business as an extension of their home. They treated colleagues in the same way that they treated guests. It was truly remarkable, and much, the way that Ed was talking about Harry wandering around the Imperial. Francis would come in every morning, wander around the breakfast room, offering people black pudding whether they wanted it or not, dropping more of it on the floor than would land on the plate. But he had a glint of hospitality in his eye, which I will never, ever forget. It was truly inspiring. A second figure that comes to mind, I spent a time in France where I was exercising a desire to work in Michelin star restaurants. So I worked in a number of 3 Michelin star restaurants. I'll never forget arriving at a place called La Côte d'Or and the patron inquiring as to who I was. And they told him where I'd worked in France. I'd worked in some of the great restaurants of France. And he just turned round to me and said, "And now you've arrived. You're at the best." And this was a gentleman called Bernard Loiseau. If you get a chance to read it, there's a lovely book called Perfection. It shows what a flawed character he was, but he was very, very driven and achieved a lot. I mean, a very sad story in the end, but it's definitely an inspiring read. In terms of mentors, and actually there's a little connection here, Edward, because the chap that I would say really made a difference to my career was the gentleman, as he mentioned, called Kit Chapman. At the time, Kit was very well known. He had a Channel 4 program. He was a regular contributor to The Caterer when it was only The Caterer magazine that existed. He had a succession of Michelin star chefs, and he really shaped the likes of Gary Rhodes. The connection, Edward, is that his uncle used to run the Imperial at Torquay in the days, by the way, when the Imperial was the great 5-star hotel outside of London, and he had stories of they would flood the ballroom and have swans swimming around as guests were dining. Do you know what I remember about Kit? I mean, Kit, his business had some ups and downs. Had been through recessions. Had been successful and less successful. When I joined him, he was starting a new venture. So he was taking this Michelin star success and wanted to make it into a brasserie chain. He'd invested a lot of money in this new venture. He insisted that I shared his office, which to everyone else in the business, this was bizarre. Why was this young Scotsman getting a top seat at the table instantly? It was the first time in my career that I would say I had an honesty of feedback. It was good. It was bad. It certainly took me down a peg or two at times. This young Turk that thought he was great, I was quite often told that I wasn't so great. And what I guess, what I learned then, one thing Kit said to me is, your CV, and I thought my CV was pretty good, but I'd been, a year and a half here, a year and a half there. He says, about time you settled down because you need to show some loyalty and longevity. And actually, it wasn't so much about CV perception. What I actually learned was to create your own challenges. There are always challenges in any business, and they'll always mutate and evolve. And if you think that the grass is always greener, you've got to look harder because there'll always be things to improve. I'll never forget the honesty of Kit's feedback, and it's probably the greatest career gift I was ever given, is that he didn't pull his punches, and I had to toughen up and learn to accept that, that feedback is going to be mixed, but it should always be honest and timely and accurate.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really interesting. I think that the honest part so early on in your career could help you kind of get to grips with where you're really at and, where you need to improve, rather than it being a case of staying comfortable in the shadows almost. Definitely.
Well, could I ask a question, Ian? Do you think this level of honesty, because I've experienced it in my earlier career, as time has evolved and how we are and the positions we're in at the moment in terms of giving people honest feedback is quite a challenge. I think that the lanes that people are in, so I would say, um, I have this, so I've got 5 kids, and the eldest is 20, the youngest is 14, and there's a lot going on, 3 girls, 2 boys. And I say to them, life, I start sounding like my dad, right? So you go through a phase of your early life where you think, I don't want to sound like my dad. Then you realize, well, actually, my dad knew an awful lot more than I gave him credit for. And now I'm sitting there going, guys, life isn't a race, against others. It's this journey that you're on. And how are you going to create the best version of yourself? And so at home in my house, when we've got issues, right, when somebody's not listening, I'd say, if you were to work with me now, we might be having a performance discussion, right? And they're going, Dad, I'll stop it. And I'm going, guys, no, this is for real. So when you go to the working world, you need to understand there's behavior and there's performance, right? So listen, if you're going to give me back chat, you're going to tell me, whatever. So what I find at the moment, I was on a mad keen journey to get this responsibility to be a general manager, right? Then I get into a role and I realize, oh, sugar, I've got a lot of people to look after. I've got a lot of people to motivate, and I'm relying on a huge amount of support and that leadership. And how are you going to motivate people? So I suppose, Ian, one of the questions I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this, and Edward, in terms of giving people this honest feedback. How are you sort of gauging that at the moment, and in terms of the way the dynamic has changed within the workforce and people's expectations?
Well, I think it's a really good question. I think that just dealing with the expectations point, I think people want honesty, but they don't always get it, Edward. And whenever I ask colleagues to tell me how others are performing, their analysis capabilities are excellent. They'll tell me how the site's doing. They'll tell me how colleagues are performing. How that translates into face-to-face conversations, I think sometimes is where the challenge is. People just don't know how to have a conversation, even though we're in this business of hospitality. If I think about my experience within this business, I would say those that have come along on a journey where we'll keep on championing honesty and the quality of conversations have the ones that have profited from it the most. And I'm saying, and this is on both sides. I'd also say, I think, when you're talking about L&D in a certain kind of way, and Edward, you did a really good introduction talking about the structure at Leonardo's. I often think that we don't take enough initiative to come into discussions. I would be embarrassed if I came to my performance review with my chairman and I wasn't prepared. If I wasn't leading that conversation, then I've not done it. I've not invested enough in myself. And I think too often there's an expectation that things are handed to us on a plate. And those that show initiative, because you're doing a great job by opening up mentorship to everybody. I don't think I had that opportunity. It didn't stop me going knocking on doors and saying to people, "I'd like to talk to you. I'd like to learn from you." And I think I've done that all throughout my career. Is that and that would be an encouragement, Edward. I would say, it took you back to you is that I think the colleagues are expecting feedback. They want to have feedback about their performance, and therefore there's a responsibility for it to be considered honest, timely, quality.
Yeah, I have a sort of a mantra in my head as I walk my business, which I do more than I've ever done before. And when I see somebody doing something really good, I'm making a big point about calling it out, because in the world that we sort of operate in, too many people are so quick to point out where something goes wrong. But when something really works well, and I had an interesting example yesterday morning where a guest goes in for breakfast, and the lady called Maisie says good morning, calls them by their name, turns to them and then says, "Will you be having your latte this morning? And by the way, would you like your pain au chocolat?" And I was just, honest to God, if I could have jumped up and hugged her, I would have right there and then, because the reaction from the customer who looked at her, and this was his third morning coming in, he looked at her and he stopped and he said, wow, he said, I really appreciate you thinking of me. And that little interaction. So afterwards, when he left, I went up to her and I said, listen, I got to just say, that was incredible. I really loved it. And she's looking at me going, what have I done? And I said, that little element of personalization has made that person's day. And that's what I've been in lots of situations where on too many occasions, people will have said to me, this is wrong, that's wrong. And when you've gone out of your way and done something really well, you would like somebody to clap it on the back and say, well done. And I find what I'm doing now is I'm finding a lot of sort of ways to try and communicate with people about, what's the message. And one of the ones I heard recently was about, do you want to be a BMW, right? I don't know if anyone's heard this one, right? So it's do you want to be a bitching, moaning, whining individual, right? Um, and I looked at it and I thought, well, there's another way to think about this. Do you want to be a brave, motivated winner? Right? And it's about that attitude of mind. And I've been trying to find these little nuances to say to my people, so I have this joke going along with my team now. Are you a BMW? Right? And they're all straight off, they know what I'm saying without having to, so you're trying to find little ways of saying to the team, look, what do we want to be and what are we about? And I think for me, it's about how do I inspire some confidence, belief from my team, but also to your point, Ian, it's about promoting this, the fact that we will help our people. And I have a big belief in that. And I say this to the guys, we will look after you. A great performance will be rewarded, and poor performance will be questioned. And I think, Edward, where you're at with Leonardo, I've recently taken on my business. I'm in it 8 months. We're nowhere near the sophistication. And you have a chat that used to work for me, was my deputy, and he's a GM with you now. And I look at the way you're evolving your people, and I would imagine, and I don't know if you could answer this or not, but your retention levels through this mentoring program, you must be seeing benefit from that. Would that be fair to say? Are you seeing that?
Yeah, I mentioned retention earlier on, and I'm always skeptical in sort of like a downturn. Just because your retention increases, that doesn't mean that everyone's happy. But over the last couple of years, retention has been growing at all levels. I've been looking at the senior team, this 90 recently. And so, we're a regular hotel group. We have our own personality, but the average length of service in sort of the top slice of the organization, the top 90, is 14 years. So that's the average, not the highest. So it's 14 years. Now, in there are 3 people that have 1 year service, and there is a team member that I swear she was born in the potwash because the service is so long. And so we've got 100% stability in that top team and an average of 14 years service. And that also is a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy because it breeds more stability. So both the guest and the team member can see that my line manager has been around. The thing that gets me is when they're invited onto a program and they already know that their line manager has been on that program before them, years before them. So I'm 15 years in the business this year. So all that stability really helps, especially when you're comparing and contrasting. I think hospitality is a really dynamic sector where movement's encouraged. I built a career on moving until I settled down. But if it works for you, if the culture in a particular organization works for you, to see people that have been around and not forced to stay there, they're really happy to be around. And that's why I think we've also got something to share, and to only share it with, a 10% of the population rather than a bigger percentage of the population. The mentoring is a really great vehicle for that. Just to pick up on what you said, Edward, about the coffee and the croissant, and it really resonated with me because I just thought you took the time So you can observe a great behavior or hear something you like, but you're a busy guy, so you're running
Yeah.
around and you can't actually stop and say anything to the team member who did the great bit of work, the great relationship building. And I think that comes back to Ian's bit as well about communication. I think communication is really complex. It's a little bit generational. It's a little bit just generally social now. I think people's resilience is a little bit low. They love the feedback, but surely I'm amazing, so I really just need you to tell me that I'm amazing. So
Mm.
if it's critical feedback, that can be a little bit tougher. But our biggest challenge in a busy business is whether this is mentoring, whether this is probationary review, an annual review, a catch up. What I sometimes hear is, or you get written down, why are you leaving? And it's because, my manager promised me something and it didn't get delivered. And it wasn't a new uniform or a pay rise. It's someone in the business who hasn't been taught to within a 3 month probation period. And you speak to the manager and they're a good person, but they will go, but I'm really busy. I just haven't had the time. And you're going, oh, I totally get that. But this person doesn't really know, this new hire doesn't know how busy you are. So you've got to make the time. So if you're going to be a mentor, if you're going to schedule an annual review, you've got to deliver it. You can't shoehorn it in with a pager and a bunch of keys and keep getting interrupted. You've
Yeah.
got, so especially if you're going to talk about something personal as well, so like performance, you've got to respect that conversation and put a meeting room aside, set up a bedroom as a meeting room, somewhere with a bit of refreshment, but stage it well and protect the time. Don't cancel, don't keep
Yeah.
rescheduling. You've got to value the process. Else, especially if you're going to deliver something that's a little bit tough and you've mucked that person about,
Yeah.
it's not right. So I don't
Yeah.
think it's the content of the message. It's classic, isn't it? It's how you're
Yeah.
delivering it. It's
Yeah.
how you're doing it. So you've got to value the process. No point going, I'm amazing. I've got 3 people who want to be my mentees, but I've never got time for them. So
Yeah.
that's sort of like this phase we're going to start looking at. Don't overpromise and don't overcommit. Almost say, I'm full at the minute, or I only mentor one person at a time. Come back to us if you can't find somebody else. But I think it's that staging and how you deliver whatever it is, review, feedback, a mentor conversation. In hospitality, time's really precious and it's going to take more time. So you've got to protect it.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely. That leads me to a good question, actually. John, have you got your hand up there? Yes, please do ask.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yeah.
you.
It'd be good to find out from you guys. What's your thoughts on formalized mentoring versus coffee mentoring? And by that, I mean when you're having chats with people on an ongoing basis, giving them a bit more casual feedback versus sitting them down in a room and going through it on a more structured basis.
For me, I think you've got to understand the style of the person that you're dealing with, and also my own personal style in terms of that comfortable environment. I think Edward, you just nailed it there. Creating the space that you can be able to be honest. And I think one of the things I'm finding is that sort of to set the scene with people about, well, what is it you'd like to get out of this? And I'm also trying to set the scene for myself in terms of, time is valuable. So let's work out and let's make it worthwhile. And I think for me, my style would be more informal. And I think that works for me. So I wouldn't necessarily know. I mean, Ian, you might have a different Edward, a different perception of it, but I think for me to get the best or give the best, that tends to work. And that's kind of the style I've adopted in when I'm mentoring people.
Yeah, John, I think there's a place for both, and it's all about fluidity. Edward made a point at the start when he was saying Jason was reminding him he's not running a hotel school, that we have these conversations for a reason.
Mm.
When I think about being a mentee and being a mentor, I sometimes I think you get to a point where you realize you need to move on, and that is actually the conversation has served its purpose. So therefore, the formality of a structure, if you've agreed to X amount of sessions and actually you don't need it, I think the quality of the relationships is also something that both parties need to be very, very tuned into.
Mm.
Again, Edward, you're setting up a structure where maybe a younger colleague would find it somewhat challenging to say this discussion isn't yielding anything for me. But I would encourage anybody to say, don't waste your time. Don't go into a conversation knowing what you want to get out of it. And sadly, even though people might go into mentoring relationships with good intentions, ego can sometimes come to the fore. Man, I've sat and listened to people who want to tell me how wonderful they are. And those are the kind of relationships which I'll extricate myself from very, very. I might smile and say, yes, yes, you are. But I
Mm.
won't be going back to that source because always kind of this, and listen, we've all got a bit of red in us, we've all got a bit of yellow in us, haven't we? But we are here because we achieve stuff, and
Yeah,
therefore, I was never interested in them being talking shops. Edward, I was very interested in what you're saying about the connection, of not having siloed working, bringing people across your business together. That's really important. But I also see too many people in my business that like to chat. And you got to get the balance right, and I think that's a real responsibility for everybody. And if there's one piece of encouragement for our youngsters, I would say, don't waste your time. So
mm,
if there are plenty of people that I've looked up to, but at some point I've said I don't agree with you. That's all right,
yeah,
because at some point you've got to be your own person. You've got
yeah,
to develop critical thinking, and that's, I guess, that's where you become a leader. Is you
yeah,
don't just accept you don't accept that this person who's got 30 years more experience from you is fantastic. They might be, they might not be.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if you're going to have a go at something, you need to have a level of courage, conviction, and you need to say what you can do and do what you can say. You know what I mean? Don't be, talk is cheap. If you're going to do it, bloody well go ahead and do it and have a go. What's the worst thing that can happen? It may not come to you, you may not get the result you want, but if you don't try, I'm with you, Ian, 100% on this. We don't have the time to waste because time is so valuable. One thing, if somebody says to me, I'm killing time, that's the worst thing you could say to me because I get really upset about it because on my deathbed, it's the one thing I'll want more of and
Yeah.
I can't replace it. I can't bank it. Once it's gone, it's gone. So, my attitude is make the best bloody use of what the time is available to you and don't moan about it. Figure out, well, what's best for you. So to me, it's so important. It's so important that time and how you use it.
I just come back in there and Edward, Liz, you've probably got a view on this, and I always get confused, but don't worry too much about the difference between coaching and mentoring. And I think back to some coaching sessions that I have, and I haven't had a lot, where the individual is just so well practiced, so skilled in the other side that within a very short period of time,
Mm.
they've said to me, why are you not acting on this? And I've walked out of that, away from that call and said, yep, I have got to do something. Short investment, big impact. I think, in mentoring, it can become a little bit too informal. A really good coach actually I think, is something that people should consider too, because they're not as invested as much.
Yeah,
They're just great sounding boards.
yeah,
I think the process shouldn't stifle the conversation, and the conversation needs to be productive. So I'd hate someone to go, oh gosh, you've got to use this system now to be a mentor in Leonardo. It used to be better before, and you'll always please some and not others. Where I would say we're coming from is really to just understand the volume of activity. So those coffee chats have a place. But I think where we're talking about sort of mentorship, there's a structured need and there's probably an end game in mind, so it's not going to drift and go on. So
mm,
I need you to give me that step up. I've identified you as someone like me that
yeah,
is ahead of me, and I want to know how you got there. I'm working really hard and I'm studying really hard, but what can you do for me? And some of that, I might want to access your network. I might want to, uh, understand all the mistakes you made. But I agree with you, Ian, there. When it's done, it's done. And you can always go back to that mentor later, but it's not a new best friend. and it's not a long term. And if it's a chit chat relationship, not to devalue any conversation, that's probably that more the coffee check-in that
Yeah,
happens for
yeah.
for very small amounts of time, constantly, or coffee chat coaching, where you're sort of sharing a piece of best practice. So, next time you do that, even better if what? How could you improve that interaction? And Edward's there going, I really liked how you used their name, as you came in for breakfast. But let me tell you a tale about one of your colleagues who had remembered the drink and, the pastry that they had. Why don't you have a go at that tomorrow? And you'll put sprinkles on top of that amazing welcome you do at the host. So I think the process shouldn't stifle anything.
Yeah.
Businesses always demand data, and I suppose I'm after some mentoring data and tracking the volume of mentorship that happens in the business. And there's a little bit of recording. People will have a mentoring record as well. That can be useful on their app as they're moving around the business. But I think just time for conversation is good in a busy sector, and the process shouldn't stifle.
Thank you, Edward. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Edward, as well for chipping in there. That's been really interesting discussion. Thank you. I actually had one brief last question before I get on to the poll that I was going to ask everyone to take part in. So if it can be a short sentence from you both, what are your views on AI in mentoring? Edward, what's your views on AI for mentorship?
Well, I get to tune in the morning. I've been on Instagram. There's some really interesting reels there. With tongue in cheek, if you want to help yourself, get yours. Look, one of the things I would say is I've got to keep myself motivated. I'm all the time trying to look at how do I hone my skills? How do I stay fresh? How do I keep myself? And I've been playing a lot with the internet, listening to different podcasts. And I think you've got to just find what suits you. And I think depending on the frame of mind you're in, and it goes back to how you condition your headspace, it really does depend on it. But yeah, I'm sort of in a voyage of discovery is what I would say to you personally.
Yep. And Ian, what about you?
Well, or similar. I think I've got a voracious appetite for knowledge, and and wouldn't and remain open-minded as to where that learning is going to come. And if I'll use AI quite a bit. Just don't take things as being gospel. But widen your knowledge and then make your own decisions. But and I guess don't neglect some of the older style stuff. I read an incredible biography of Napoleon last year. Would you think what's the relevancy? And I think in terms of leadership lessons, it was so useful to me how he changed throughout his life. So I would say to anybody, whether it's AI, whether it's podcasts, whether it's books, whether it's talking to people, just get out there and be curious.
Great. No, thank you both very much. I think that was a great finisher there. So thank you, Edward and Ian. We have some poll questions now for everybody. So I'm just going to launch that. Here we go. So to start, we are curious about where everyone is at on the AI journey. So how comfortable do you currently feel using AI tools like ChatGPT, Copilot to support your work and learning? So very comfortable, somewhat comfortable, curious but unsure where to start, or not comfortable at all. That's the first question. So then on the second question, we kind of want to understand, thinking specifically about mentoring relationships. Which areas do you think AI could most support mentoring relationships? Is it goal setting, development planning, preparing for mentoring conversations, career exploration and skill building, measuring progress and reflection, or you don't think AI fits into mentoring? And then the third one concern we often hear is about whether tech helps or hinders human connection. I think this is an interesting one. Do you think it could strengthen or weaken the human connection in mentoring? Strengthen it significantly, strengthen it a little, make no real difference, or weaken it, or you're not sure yet? And then we've got, would you feel comfortable if your mentor or mentee use AI to help prepare for sessions? Yes, absolutely. Yes, if used transparently, maybe, or no, you'd prefer it to stay human only. And then the last but not least, what's your biggest concern about AI in mentoring or development? I think I could see what might be coming on that fifth one. I'll give everyone a couple of seconds to respond. Yeah, let's have a look. So we've gone very comfortable, 29%, somewhat comfortable, 43% most popular. So there's a little bit of some hesitancy maybe. Not comfortable at all, 14%. Which areas do you think AI could most support mentoring relationships? Well, 57% said preparing for mentoring conversations. Interestingly, no one said career exploration or skill building. Do you think AI will strengthen or weaken human connection? So not sure yet seems to be the favorite one there. Interesting. Some saying strengthen it. It's not unanimous, is it? So would you feel comfortable if your mentor or mentee use AI to help prepare for sessions? Yes, if used transparently, and maybe depending on how it's used, most popular. And then lastly, what's your biggest concern about AI and mentoring or development? So we've got loss of authenticity is top, over-reliance on technology, and lack of understanding of human nuance. Great. Thank you all very much for taking part of that. Ed, shall I hand back over to you to talk us through this activity that you've spent some time doing? Do you want me to share the
Yeah,
slide?
brilliant. If you can just pop up the slide, that would be ideal. So for everyone, live this afternoon, but also if you're listening to the recording as well, one of the things that we wanted to do when we put this group together, when we met in London and we've met today, is that we wanted to go on a journey and share experiences, and we've had a really good opportunity to do that this afternoon, but also create some unique experiences and data every time we meet. So we've got a mentorship project that you can try or not. But I would definitely say give it a look over. So after this call, we'll send you a little PDF document, which is a toolkit that has everything in there. And this is a real opportunity to get involved with some real life AI large language model mentorship. So we talk about it, but are we talking about the same thing? So this gives us an opportunity to have a shared experience about the same thing. So that's why we're doing it. If you can put the next bullet up for us, Izzy, that'd be great. Thank you. So the project that you'll see in the toolkit, it's over 8 weeks, but honestly, it's over 8 weeks because we've got 8 different things that you can do with this project. But even if it was just for a couple of weeks that you wanted to get involved, that's all right as well. And it's basically to get us, where we dip our toe into this 100% AI mentorship. In terms of the time, it's a task a week. It's a different frame or prompt each week with your AI friend. But as I said, as long as you can give it, and ideally you might, if you liked it, you might spend an hour a week in conversation with your AI agent. So what we're going to give you is it's about a 4-page little toolkit. There's a little bit of an explanation about why we're doing it. There's a little bit of safety on there as well to put up the guardrails. Definitely a reminder of not sharing anything corporately sensitive or anything like that, and not treating AI as a human. That might be a controversial statement in itself. But the toolkit really is made up of 8 prompts. So with AI, what you put in is a real barometer of what you're going to get out. And in there, it explains that the green sections are almost you can copy and paste into your AI agent, the green sections. So some of those sections you'll need to flesh out because you're telling your AI agent, who you are. The first thing that you need to do when you've read the little toolkit is decide who your agent or AI partner could be. So my example here is that Leonardo is a Microsoft business. So we would naturally use Copilot. So there's a good chunk of the business that has access to Copilot, and that's part of our technology rollout in the next couple of years as well. But there are other agents, so Claude, Google Gemini, ChatGPT. But the advantage with Copilot is because Copilot's attached to my work account, and this is where you start to go, ooh, a bit scary. It knows me. So every time I go into Copilot, it's remembered everything that I've done with it over the last sort of 12 months or so. So I was working with Copilot the other day, and it produced a really good piece of work for me. And then it just popped up. Would you like me to put the Birmingham hotel branding on that? And I was going, I've not talked about Birmingham in this conversation. Why is it done? Why is it doing that? And I'm going, God, because I did the piece and I've been doing a lot of work for our Birmingham hotel. So is it trying to think ahead for me? And then I really realized that it is remembering everything I'm telling it. So when I log on, it remembers. So that's something to remember that if it's not an agent that you have joined or you sign on to, you probably would have to keep putting the same prompts in to build the relationship. So I know it's a big ask, but if you use an agent already that you are a member of, you log into it, it will know more about you already. But you could try individual prompts with an agent that you're not a member of. And apart from your lived experience, we want you to have that experience. Just note down maybe, what the outcomes were and particularly how you felt. So I think with any human relationship, feeling is important, but there's even from my research, there's a little bit in there that you may or may not do. And I passed this through a working group I was in, an external working group the other day, because it said your AI agent will love it if you name it and you use its name and you talk about yourself. And the room just nearly set upon me, going, that's the root of, damnation. If you start giving it an actual name and go, well, my co-pilot's Colin and we're great together, and they were just sort of looking at us. But I know Colin is not real. That's the important thing. He's not going to become my new best friend. So there's loads of little tips like that, but I think feeling and outcome would be really important. And it would just be interesting to see, look, we keep talking about, would you like this AI agent as a mentor? And it would just be interesting to see from everyone listening to the recording today, who is live, if some of us, all of us, took the challenge. Let's see where the journey took us. And with my business L&D head on, if it in for the right mentoring tasks, I think it might open up a whole area of, again, back to Liz's initial point of access. So mentorship does take paid work time. So if you're offering mentorship, there is going to be a cost on payroll time of two people, not just one. And you might not find a mentor you like. There might not be enough mentors if this all went crazy. But engaging for maybe junior or lower level mentoring conversations that are probably more fact-based and global rather than relationship-based and one person's experience. Could AI play a part? If anything else, could it widen accessibility? And also maybe temper the total cost of mentorship because you've got one human on the payroll and Colin isn't. So I can take my time with Colin, and he's not doing something else when he should be doing something else. So yeah, so that's the project. It's all really self-explanatory in the toolkit that Izzy will share, and I'd love to get you involved. And we'd share on our next online session together, and then when we meet face to face again in London, it would be good to have some feedback and experiences to share.
Great, that's great. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Izzy. I think it's been a really interesting session today. Well, I've enjoyed it anyway, and I think I've got a lot out of it. I there's just I'll just list three things that came to me while we were talking. So, Ed, when you were talking about that cascading mentoring, but also everything being open, accessible, and transparent, I think that's really important with any mentoring program that you're putting into place, but also just in general when we're dealing with people. Edward, I loved when you said about needing needing to have someone believe in you, and I think that's what mentoring's all about. Having somebody who's like your supporter. So your mentor, sometimes your supporter, who says you really can do this. Yeah, it's going to be difficult. Yeah, it's going to be challenging, but ultimately, I'm in your corner and I can help you. And I think that's what great mentors are, that they believe in you and believe you can do it. From Ian, I really appreciated that he talked about flawed characters. I think we're all a little bit flawed. I don't know anybody who's perfect. Yeah, there are some people who think they're perfect, but most of us admit that we're flawed. But also in that element of humility when we say we're flawed, that comes to the fore, and that can really help people who think, oh, but I'm no good at this and I don't have that and I can't do that. When we say we're flawed and we can help people, I think that's really, really important, along with the honest feedback. And I know that companies I work with really struggle, and especially younger managers now really struggle with being able to give honest feedback. And I think that's a good talking point. I think we need to talk more about honest feedback. Uh, as a laugh, I really love the BMW piece. I'm going to use that because I like that. So yes, I'm going to take that, Edward, and just run with it, I think, because I really like that. Just from a personal perspective, for everybody to talk to. With regards to the challenge that Edward has set for us, it would be great if everybody could give it a go, because I think it's important to try these things. And to see where that leads us, because we do have an event coming up, hopefully in April. So we haven't finalised the date yet, but the location will be London, and it will be an in-person event. So if we can bring some of our findings to that event, that would be amazing, from the challenge that Ed's given us. And also to let you know that that event will be in person, as I said, but also we're going to look at the importance of picking the right mentor during that event and how you can find the right person for you. So lots more coming, and I really appreciate you spending the time today. And thank you all, especially thank our special guests, Edward Bracken and Ian Fitzgerald, and hope to see you all very soon.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.